You're watching TNN. Before we show you tonight's episode of The Weekly, I note that this edition was written and recorded in October 2021. This episode was initially pulled following the death of Sir David Amess MP and events subsequently overtook us. The episode reflects the environment at the time we were due to show this episode, so expect COVID to pop up again. Interestingly, some of the plotlines parallel more recent events, particularly the Russian invasion of Ukraine. While the political environment last autumn definitely had that outcome as a possibility, it wasn't something we were thinking about. Nonetheless, major themes we tackle are still relevant and have become even more so in recent weeks. So with that in mind, it's time now to join Kate McIntosh in Queensferry and Jeremy Barr in Berwick-upon-Tweed for tonight's edition of The Weekly.
Good evening and welcome to the information superhighway of news. Tonight, keeping a very close eye on what Scotland's trying to do. Tonight's headlines. Fifed out of here. Councillors are due to vote this week on controversial proposals to exercise its powers under the Kingdoms Act 1333 by seceding from Scotland and establishing its own independent micronation. We have full coverage. The manufacturers of Scotland's national soft drink have warned Fifers that supplies of Irn-Bru will evaporate if the region votes to separate in an apparent act of protest against separatism. We'll speak to key stakeholders in the region's most popular vote and...
I'm here in Berwick-upon-Tweed, where the wider issue of Scotland's future is on the line. The Union hangs on by a bare thread, and we're asking what efforts locals here are taking to secure the future of the United Kingdom.
Wednesday, 20th of July, 2022. From TNN, this is The Weekly with Kate McIntosh and Jeremy Barr.
On the week that political tensions between Fife and Edinburgh grew ever more, councillors in Glenrothes will vote on Wednesday on whether to enact its constitutional right as a kingdom to succeed and form a new independent state. Government ministers at Holyrood are said to be gravely concerned at the move, who want Scotland to be an independent, united state. From Holyrood, we're joined by correspondent Kirstin Allan, who can tell us more. Kirstin, what's the mood in Edinburgh?
Dire. No public vote is needed here, just a consensus of rebellious SNP councillors mixed in with a small number of independents who hold the balance of Fife's future in their hands. Scots common law dictates there to be very little power for ministers here to do anything, and they're holding their breath for the worst.
No word on if there's anything ministers are doing to maybe sweet talk their way out of trouble?
They'll be doing that right now in closed doors meetings, but I'm told that they're too afraid to rock the boat. It looks like they're just waiting and seeing.
And what's the mood nationwide? There have been a flurry of polls taken this week.
Yes, across Scotland the appetite for a new nation in Fife is very poor. Just 4% going in favour. It looks a little better in Fife itself, with 23% hoping councillors vote yes.
Thank you, Kirstin. Let's now take a look at the politics behind the vote. Fife has a proud and rich history in itself. It's where some of the world's most famous art and people have come from. Fifers have stuck together as a clan since the Pictish age, although back then the region was regularly at war with itself. Fife has its problems though, and councillors will be thinking very carefully about if it can go alone safely. The University of St Andrews, for example, has more wealth in its students than is healthy. It threatens world domination without appropriate mitigation, not currently enshrined in local bylaws. And then there's the Kirkcaldy problem. Any attempt at independence will see the town battle for administrative control of the nation. That could see blood spilled on Fife streets. Kirstin is still at Holyrood and can tell us what Scottish ministers are facing if they're defeated.
The government would fall on the spot, Kate. The leader of the opposition, Douglas Ross, might try to form a government, but there could be weeks of wrangling and perhaps even after that, a general election.
But will they be defeated? Because you have an update.
Ministers aren't fully sure, but I just spoke to an anonymous source who tells me they think those independent councillors are a little too reticent to back the motion.
Kirstin, thank you.
Coming up in a moment, how the union is being held together by locals here. But first, here's the latest coffee prices in your area.
Jeremy Barr is in Berwick-upon-Tweed tonight, examining Scotland's future in the United Kingdom. Jeremy?
Thank you. Good evening from the town that for hundreds of years couldn't decide which nation it wanted to be a part of. And locals here are now offering moral and practical advice to Scots who are struggling with the same dilemma. I spoke to Caroline Dependence, one of a group of Berwick residents who are afraid of an Anglo-Scots border. And she tells us about her group's efforts to strengthen the union in this report.
Sorry, Jeremy, we'll have to pause you there because we've just had some important breaking news that's reached TNN in the last few moments. The government of New Zealand have authorised its navy to encroach on Scottish waters. Repeating that, the government of New Zealand are now beginning an invasion of Scotland. Jeremy, you've been following this story for a while. What's happened up to this point?
Yeah, the New Zealand government have been uneasy for a while now with Scotland's handling of the COVID crisis. New Zealand's zero COVID strategy has been covered extensively, where they invoke very harsh lockdowns after just single confirmed cases. At the world stage, they see Scotland as a failure on COVID and an ideal area to take action on as a form of protest to other world governments' ineptitude in response to the pandemic. Navy ships have been floating around the Atlantic and Arctic Oceans as well as the North Sea for some time now, but if TNN intelligence is correct, they are now about to attempt to overthrow the government at Holyrood.
We have some live pictures now of the coastline here at Queensferry. We're expecting some of these ships to reach the area in a little under half an hour from now. Is there any response so far from London?
None yet. The Prime Minister has been asked about this situation a number of times during Prime Minister's questions. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer spending a whole session alerting him to the potential trouble, but Mr Johnson has been pretty nonchalant. I'm not too sure personally he even thinks this is happening or believes it, but what I can see now behind the camera is quite chilling. It looks like a large group of soldiers from the New Zealand Army are marching up that road just there, heading north by lots of things. Scottish border, only 2 or 3 miles away, so the march won't take especially long, will it?
Interrupting you again, Jeremy, because we've just had word that Holyrood has fallen to the New Zealand government. We'll take a quick pause with that.
A sobering moment this, which unfortunately isn't hugely surprising given just how little opposition the British government have actually made to this tactical invasion. It really is unprecedented scenes. Joining me now on the phone is Northumberland's Chief of Resources for the British Army, Corporal Gary Knight. Gary, what's happening?
We are just south of your position, sir, awaiting orders from higher up in the train of command.
Yeah, okay, but what will your strategy be to liberate Scotland and return the nation to British possession?
We don't have one. We drew up plans to what the powers that be told us to scrap them.
But we understand you want the job done. You know, will you go rogue to do it? This is sovereign territory that New Zealand has absolutely no right to invade.
We can't possibly comment on rumours, sir, but we appreciate the anxieties that people are feeling on both sides of the border.
Gary Knight, thank you.
Jeremy, the New Zealand government have appointed a young man by the name of Lukas SPEAKS to the role of Scottish First Minister.
That's interesting, but again, not a huge surprise. This is a figure we've been examining closely in recent months. SPEAKS is a well-established figure in New Zealand politics, a very close ally to their Premier Jacinda Ardern. If he doesn't like what he sees, he does tend to make a fuss about it.
Once again, I'll have to stop you there because Lukas is coming outside at Holyrood to speak. Let's listen in.
Thank you, everyone, and good afternoon. I have just been to see the Queen, and she's given a blessing for a new administration to take over in Scotland. Early today, a fleet of ships from Her Majesty's government of Middle-earth undertook a tactical invasion of the nation of Scotland to bring it out of London rule and into the hands of the Middle-earth administration. The mission was highly successful and was undertaken with minimal opposition from either governments in Westminster or in Edinburgh. Any laws that apply in Scotland currently cease to have effect at midnight tonight and will be replaced instead with laws, orders and directives from Middle-earth as they apply currently. The Middle-earth government has taken very unkindly to the handling of the coronavirus in Europe and the Americas. Its leaders have been woeful and people have died. We cannot stand for this. People are not cattle to do with as you please. The strategy must change, and we cannot sit back and allow your ineptitude to continue. Mrs. Arden and I both concluded this morning that now is the right time to act. Scotland will not return to English rule, nor will its elected parliamentarians be permitted to return to the work until we are satisfied that no further lives are in direct threat because of this pandemic. In the meantime, I am honoured to work as Scotland's next First Minister until our aims are achieved. And now, I may address the Scottish nation. Your leaders have failed you, and for that we apologise. Now's the time to get things right. The Wellington administration will champion your safety from the virus and return immediately to a strategy of suppression and elimination. Cases today are too high. We'll bring them down. From midnight tonight, you must stay at home with exemptions only for emergency and healthcare services. The government will begin a national essentials program delivering food and healthcare packages to your door free of charge. Charges for essential services, including gas, electricity, water, television, and internet, are suspended with immediate effect. A weekly coronavirus payment of £120 will be paid to everyone while this lockdown persists. This is hard, but we aim to make it easy for you as we possibly can. We thank you in your advance for your hard work and cooperation. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Scotland is going back into lockdown at midnight tonight as its new government reimposes a zero COVID strategy. Back to you in Queensberry. For me, good night.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's been one of those days. Daily life in Scotland will be forever changed by a ruthless and efficient invasion on the nation's waters by New Zealand. Catch tomorrow morning's The Day Begins, where we'll have an exclusive interview with the new Scottish Premier. He'll tell us more about his plans for the next Scottish Government and what changes we can expect to see. And before we go, just news that Fife's council has been dismissed by the new Scottish administration. Some 17,000 people have just lost their jobs. Good night.